Well, big friendly hellos and welcome to the first of the 2023 February 14th Notary Governance meetings. High level on the agenda, what we have planned for today is really briefly the team, the SLAs, and then we are going to give you some updates on the notary onboarding, how Slack's working, what's going on with the verifications, and when you can expect to see your first round of onboard training come to you. The majority of the call we've dedicated to the proposal section. There were three big issues that are still open that we're getting ready to close. We wanted to make sure that you were aware of those proposals, give you a chance to kind of voice any thoughts you may have, and then share the links if you wanted to go back and then sign any of those issues. We're going to have time at the end of this call for any discussions. So if there was something that came up that might be a little bit off topic and you wanted to save that or flag it for the community, there will be time at the end of this call for anything not on the agenda to get into. So with that, the governance calls take place every 2 weeks. We're on the February 14th call, as you can see right now, and the next call will be on 28 February. If you're not tracking already, we post this in the Slack channel on Filecoin Plus with this link. You can add this to your calendar. All of them will show up automatically. For you notaries that are on the line, as well as any applicants, storage providers, interested community, we take a SLA participation using this Airtable form here. I'm dropping the link in chat. For you that have been on the call, nothing new. If this is your first call, this is a great way to say like, hey, I was here. I was taking part in the program and making my voice heard and just being an active community member. So go ahead and fill out this link. If you are new, you can just select, hey, my organization. I'm just a community member, however you may do it. Notaries, we're going to be providing an update here coming up in March for like, hey, how have you been doing on the SLA? What do we see? And that way, when the leaderboard launches coming up, there's no surprises and we can kind of help anything that might be blocked as you go forward on that. If you have anything that you want to add to these agendas, as always, we have a GitHub issue that will be made. You could log into the Notary Governance repo for the program, add a comment on any one of the applications here for like the next governance call, and we'll bake it into the agenda as well as follow up to help you if there's anything you need. So again, if there's anything you want to add on these agendas going forward, just come into the Notary Governance repo and add it right there. So with that, we are your governance team. We're here to help with any questions or issues or topics you may have for address. Please feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help. In Slack, we have several channels. We just share this as a reminder for those of you that are on the call, how these channels can be used, best places for them. And I'm going to expand a little bit on this topic as we go through here today, and then just talk briefly about not only do we have these Slack channels, but what are some of the best ways to utilize these in relation to like GitHub proposals as we go on. So Slack versus GitHub. Slack is really effective at broadcasting a message, as you know, like, hey, the governance call is coming up, or hey, what's the status of X, Y, and Z? It's also really helpful for having like a back and forth conversation, like, hey, troubleshooting, something's happened, best practices. What it's not really good at is being a record of like what happened at a point in time, which is why we use GitHub. So recently there's been a lot of uptick in like conversations that are taking place in Slack, which are really valuable to have. But one of the downsides to Slack is that we might have a thread that kicks off with like 3 or 4 relevant parties that are discussing an issue. And then we might see that thread just really expand out with Slack names that we may not have had any working relationships with in the past. We don't know who they are, who they represent. So one of the nice benefits of the GitHub is it doesn't eliminate that, but it definitely cuts down on those conversations jumping in by people that might not have a vested stake. So if there was a topic that you wanted to kind of flag for discussion, Slack is always okay. But if it might be something that was going to be either like calling out, like a specific example would be like a trust and transparency flag or audit that you wanted to raise. One of the better ways to do this is to file a GitHub proposal like, hey, I've seen the following behavior. I'd like to just kind of flag this for discussion versus flagging that in Slack, because in Slack, it's kind of hard to like move it forward to give it a voice. And so we just ask if there is something that you wanted to see with that, filing a proposal is a really effective way. And I'll be writing a proposal to kind of address this and see if we can put maybe some more helpful frameworks as we grow and communicate together as a community. So just as a quick like introduction, if there was something that you see within the program, either to improve it or that you've noticed with behavior, filing that issue inside of GitHub is a really positive way to move the conversation forward. And then that could be referenced in Slack. We don't have to stop Slack, but we're just going to start trying to get some of these conversations in a place where we can capture them more. And we'll talk about this more on the call as we go. So with that, let's jump into notary stuff. So you notaries on the line, you would have gotten a ping from me in the last few days if in your disclosure form, we do not have a first and last name. So this is a little bit of an update versus the second and third rounds. And what needs to be required is every notary must have a human on the end of that ledger that will be responsible for maintaining it, signing data. In the past, we just did checks on the organization name. So Kevin organization versus Kevin last name. And the reason for this new update is just the increase in transparency and sanctions that we're pushing forward. So those of you that needed that information, I've sent you a Slack like, hey, can you please get this to me? If I don't hear back from you, probably by tomorrow, I'm going to ping your application one more time. Like, hey, we need this information to go forward. We cannot just have the organization name. So if you did not hear from me, if you didn't get a ping, you're good to go if you've included that first name, last name. If you did not include that first name, please check your Slack. What we're looking for is just to have, again, a human first name, last name that's responsible for that. We shared this 2 weeks ago. Essentially what this guide is, and it's here in the steps, is the guide for verifying your address in the registry system. If you haven't done this step, please do so already. I believe Phil might have sent you a ping if you were missing this. Essentially what this does is this will link your address and your GitHub to the registry. And that way, when we start making the ratifications, you're on board. If you're blocked, if you have issues and you are a notary, the best place to flag that is in the private notary channel. I recommend not DMing Phil and I. We could definitely help you, but we'll get much faster response if you put it in that public channel. So again, if you're a notary and you haven't taken this step to register your verification on your ledger, please do that either during this call or off this call. If you have any questions, let us know in the Notary Governance private channel. The training is wrapping up now. Phil has been spearheading this, so big thank you. I have a screenshot of the deck he's putting together along with a video. And what it's designed to do is just walk you through the steps of logging into the verification, pulling up the open applications, seeing how to look at those, and then link your GitHub to sign it. We also have a few open discussions in the Notary Governance repo about what good behavior, bad behavior looks like. I think coming forward in this fourth round, we're going to be really focused on diligence and open transparency. So making sure that if you are signing these applications, you're really transparent in like how you did the diligence, what your connections are. And so we have a few issues that we'll talk about that. But in high level detail for you notaries that just came on board with the fourth round, thanks for your patience. This has been a big lift with all the new requirements for processing and legal, simultaneously mixing that with like, how are we keeping this program transparent and trust and transparency filled? So again, thank you for your patience. This onboarding guide will start getting you once we've completed that ratification. So before I get on to proposals, which is kind of the meat of the conversation, I wanted to pause. And if anybody had any questions about the registry verification, the onboarding, anything we talked about now, this would be a great time. All right, seeing no hands, I'll move on. Again, if anything comes up, feel free to shoot a hand in Slack. With that, the first proposal that we have on the radar today is the FVM Notary Staking. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Phil. Phil, if you'd like to handle.
Hey, yeah. So hi guys. I just want a quick few updates on the how this MVP is going to go. So Fabrice from the Kego team presented this video here in the slide in the Space Warp Hackathon. It was well received, and he won one of the Spheron Prize awards. Given the traction we're getting, we're going to continue to experiment on this MVP. And if you want to watch the video, you'll get the slides and you can watch the video. It's also on the GitHub discussion post 817. And yeah, next steps, we're probably going to find like more exact values on like how much to stake and like how much to slash and how much to reward. And I think we're going to start debating and like figuring out the exact implementation details of this. And yeah, Gary, on to the next slide. Right. Yeah, and then I guess to summarize the discussion that has been going on so far in 817, one of the big points that was raised by multiple people was the fact that if we do staking, it would discourage notaries from signing anyone else except whichever clients they're acquainted with, because of the amount of risk. So if you have to stake, if you're a notary and you have to stake for a client you don't know, you wouldn't do it because it's just too much risk. The client can just do whatever they want. And so my kind of reply to this is notary staking was not meant to solve that problem. And I don't think it makes it any worse, because I think that that's already the case now. And if we were to do notary staking in the future, it wouldn't make the problem any worse, because it's already the case. So this problem we'll need to find other solutions for the problem of notaries not wanting to sign applications from other strangers. One idea we're thinking about is like randomly assigning notaries to different client applications and getting them to sign, and then incentivizing them to do so. And yeah, so that's another topic of its own, and I will probably write another discussion topic on that. And yeah, I think that's so far it.
Great. We'll pause and turn it over for questions if anybody has any issues or thoughts on this. Now would be a good time to discuss. Quiet group. All right. Well, if you have any thoughts, the issue is right there. 817, as Phil mentioned, kind of collecting final thoughts since it's been open for 2 weeks. Feel free to share before we move forward. Any thoughts, feel free to flag. DataCap removal, Simon, are you on the line to speak?
Yeah, hey, KV. Thank you, everyone. So I know we introduced this in the last governance call, but to give an update, the work for the proposal to remove DataCap will be following shortly. Yeah, if you missed the last governance call or didn't see the proposal, it basically outlines the process of DataCap removal. And so if you'd like to see more about it, you can look at the issue itself. But just want to thank all of the community members that engaged and left comments in the issue in the previous weeks. Your feedback is great, and these kinds of input will only help us to understand what the community really wants. And so I tried to make sure that I either answered or acknowledged everyone's comment. I would say the biggest thing is that this is a new request that's going to be added to the program. It seemed like most people who did comment on the proposal were pretty positive about this. And there's always room for improvement, and we can make changes in the future if needed. I think with time, I'm not going to go really too much into detail on the process. The issue itself outlines the actual process of how the DataCap removal will go. But I think the last thing I will say about this one is that this is the last kind of thing that we want to do for a client. This is a pretty drastic measure, and this isn't something we want to abuse. And so any notary or TNT working group member can basically apply through an application that we will make, and either it gets accepted or denied. And so again, yeah, if you want to read more, please take a look at the proposal. And again, we'll be starting the work soon. Yeah. Any questions or?
Simon, when will we close this issue out? What's the last date someone could comment on this?
I mean, it's been about 2 weeks now. Maybe by the end of this week.
Okay. All right, Simon, thanks for that. I know that this is going to impact a lot of the process. So if anybody on the call has any additional thoughts, we'll have time at the end if something comes to mind. But again, thank you, Galen, for sharing this link. 821 DataCap removal. This will be kind of impactful as we start looking at like making this program go forward from a trust and transparency standpoint. So again, any thoughts or feedback, this issue will be open for one more week before we kind of move forward on it. Joel, I see Julian, I see your hand up. Floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. My question is like, do we have the ambition at some point to remove DataCap that is already allocated to, not allocated, but that already attached to like this?
That is outside the scope of this, would require a FIP and would require way more investigation. So it is a completely different process.
Yeah, I got that. I'm just wondering, like, if we still have this target, or if we will just stop here with this DataCap removal process.
We, the governance team, are not currently drafting a FIP to look at how we, the Filecoin Plus program, would remove verified data from a sealed deal. No, that is not currently on our priority list of things to solve because of the amount of technical investment that it would take to get that FIP written and passed. So no, that is not in our scope of work right now. There are much more pressing things that we want to get addressed, such as how to actually implement and utilize this FIP of removal from a client.
Thanks.
Doesn't mean that we won't ever write that FIP. And it doesn't mean that somebody in the community can't write that FIP. We've seen a couple people write discussion posts on that, but no one has actually written a technical FIP that would explain how to do it, to my knowledge.
Julian, great question. Thank you for asking that. All right, and anything else, we can always come back in the discussion if you have it. Thanks again. A lot of these easily come up in this discussion, make it more helpful as you guys might leave your comments on the thread. Next is auto close. Simon, are you okay to talk to this one as well while you're here?
Yeah, again, just want to thank everyone who provided some comments in here as well. Similar to what I said in the previous proposal, we'll see how this proposal goes and we can make adjustments moving forward if needed. But to give a quick recap, the request would be to auto close non-DataCap allocated applications that do not have any GitHub engagements after 14 days. I think that was like one of the biggest questions that people were asking in the proposal. Is like, what is having like no engagement? And so we were saying any GitHub comments or any engagement within the issue itself. So this will help basically each issue to be monitored and have community members just to be active to make sure the flow of each issue is moving forward. But another big thing that I saw in the comments was to kind of help prevent applications to be closed without the client knowing. There will be a message provided to the client who created the application after 7 days of no engagement to update the issue, provide them some sort of message, and to letting them know if they don't have any sort of engagement or comments after the 14 days, the application will close. And again, the work for this will start soon and will be announced when it's complete. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Simon. I'll pause again and see if anybody has any questions. I know this came up on the last call with the 14 days, so I'm really curious if anybody has thoughts or wants to flag that for discussion.
Hey, this is Greg with Picnic. I have a quick question.
Please.
Yeah, thanks. So just, I'm trying to understand exactly what this means. So if I submit an application and we're waiting for our customer to send us data and it's been over 2 weeks and there's been no action, I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand what's the trigger for non-engagement. And, you know, I'm just trying to understand exactly what this means.
Yeah, sure. So I think first I would say it's any application that hasn't even received any allocation for DataCap allocation. And two, I think the engagement part is if you see any sort of comments or triggers that, or any like bot messages that happen, that would be considered engagement.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, so in Gregory's case, if they are waiting for 2 weeks, does that trigger any engagement?
Well, we would close
so,
it
right?
first. I think. Well, I mean, I feel like I hear the concern right now is that within that 2 week span, there isn't going to be anything happening within the issue. Again, I just want to say, one, it is applications that haven't received any DataCap, and then two, I think we decided on the 2 weeks just because we think that's enough time for the client to find a notary within that time. And so that's kind of like, yeah, I guess that's kind of the time that we decided on.
Simon, just to be clear though, this thing that says provide a message after 7 days to provide an update or something, like that could be as simple as in Greg's scenario, right? Being like, hey, we don't have this yet, or hey, we're still blocked on the client, or we're still working with notaries, or some sort of thing that basically lets us know that as a community, this particular client who's applying is still interested in the fact that they're applying, right? Even if they haven't necessarily made forward progress.
Yeah, I think the 7 days was more of like a warning status, just to give an update to, so that like some of the like application doesn't get lost and it doesn't get closed without the client knowing. Sorry, I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Sorry, so that's 7 days is an alert effectively that would be issued via automation, but a client response to that by way of a comment, does that meet the bar of activity? I guess is the question.
I would say so, just because I think that's kind of what we decided for right now, for the first iteration, just to be any sort of comments within that issue.
Cool. So Greg, hopefully that answers your question as well. It sounds like keeping everybody updated is, even by way of a comment in the GitHub application, counts as activity. And what we're really looking for is cases where we can't even get that because it sounds like, you know, it may not be a priority for the client right now.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thanks. That clears it up. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you asking that, Greg. Thanks. Julian, I see your hand. Floor is yours.
Yeah, one question for Greg. Is that related to the application you sent me, or it's you refer to another one?
Certainly could be. So this was one where, excuse me, it was a 1.5 terabyte request, and Julian reviewed and approved, but didn't have DataCap to allocate, and so it did sit for 2 weeks at least. And then we ended up resubmitting another one with Shinan as the notary.
So that wasn't an LDN, and I don't know that we've specified on this auto close whether this would apply to both direct client allocation requests or LDNs. So that's a question for Simon, if the intent here was that it would apply to both. And similarly, I was like, the request was made, there was no, like, there was back and forth conversation. If it then sat with no additional back and forth conversation, then it would close. And again, the cost here is just exactly what you did, which is open another one, like to another notary. And so it's not like you're getting, in this case, like as it stands right now, there's no like penalty or anything if your issue gets closed and you open another one.
Yeah, I mean, there is no point for me just to update every week to say like, I still have no DataCap. I still have no DataCap. Should I do that to keep it open? That's what we expect, or because like, I mean.
Yeah, you could do that, or you could say like, go ask for DataCap from another notary. Like, I don't have DataCap.
I mean, what my answer was like, it's supposed to come soon, so just wait a few weeks, or just reach out to you guys just to know when we are going to have our DataCap allocation. for
Yeah.
the next round.
Yeah, like I said, we're still waiting on those 13 to finish their verification.
Okay.
It's been weeks.
And I guess I would just jump in and say, I guess the cost that I see is with the customer that's looking at this and wondering why it's, at a standstill. And so it,
So long.
forces me to go back and try to explain what's happening.
Yeah.
So that's the cost.
But that's like, if it sits at a standstill and then gets closed, that shows that we acknowledge that it was at a standstill, right?
Yeah, and then once again, I'm going back to the customer saying this is why that closed,
Which, like,
right? So
I would argue
it
like,
creates
should
a
be
tough
happening
spot
anyway.
for me with the customer. That's what I'm saying.
It creates this tough spot because it closed. I feel like if it sits for 2 weeks, you're in the same tough spot with the customer.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Right.
So it's
But
2 tough spots, I guess.
but that doesn't mean that because they're in a tough spot, they have to have the issue closed. So yeah, I think that I see a challenge here in how this would scale. So if we have 1,000 applications that are, or less than that, but are still, so what is expected for people to do, like send another comment? So we would have a lot of comments in a lot of stale issues just to get the issue open. And then if you have notifications open enabled for the repository, you just get the, like, you would get spammed a lot because of that. So I don't see how that scales.
Okay, I would be happy for you to propose, like, think about it and propose an alternative that you do think scales, because I think what you're talking about is just a problem. But I think this is safe enough to try, where if an application is not getting any conversation back and forth, it's safe enough to assume, let's just close it for now. We give people a warning. We say, hey, notaries haven't signed this. Are you still here? Are you still engaged? The client or a person working with them can say, yeah, I'm still here. I'm still waiting on notaries. Sorry, here's the situation. Notaries haven't seen it because blah, 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 or whatever. And if that feels like spam, to me, I think that's exactly what we want those comments to be. We want those comments to be the client or representative of the client jumping in their own GitHub issue and saying, this is where this is. This is why I'm still waiting. I'm still interested. That shows a pulse. It shows a warm lead. I don't think that's spam. If they reply and just say yes, then maybe we need to change the parameters of our auto close. But this feels like a safe enough thing to try and learn from, rather than shutting it down because we think that
I'm not
people
saying
are
shut it
gonna.
down. I'm just raising, like, maybe a question for the team. I'm not saying to shut it down and not experiment. I'm absolutely not saying that. So you're free to try whatever you want. I'm just raising something that may be an issue and maybe something that is good to think about. I'm not saying to like stop experimenting and stop doing the stuff.
If we try this and we see the types of comments that we get from clients, or that we see people just doing something to trigger a bot, then like maybe we need to change it. But I think that the first pass is just, how do we manage the number of open issues that we think may have been opened as not necessarily duplicates, but just like somebody doing kind of a shotgun approach to open a whole bunch of issues and see what sticks, and they're not getting traction. Let's see which ones are interested. This is like a very similar process that a lot of types of like lead generation do.
Yeah, but do you have any data on the average time that an issue is open? So for example, if maybe we could raise that from 14 days to maybe a month, and then all of the actual people that are just waiting are not impacted by this, and
I think that going back to like Greg's point, if you are representing a client and you have had no activity in your client application for 2 weeks, you probably have some questions. And a month, if you are representing a client and you have had literally no conversation, even on yourself, like even you as the representative have not gone and posted and done anything for a month, like that just to me seems kind of insane. Like an insane amount of time for you to like not push the ball forward. Sitting on one of your applications for 2 weeks, for 14 days, and not doing anything, to me, like indicates that it is not like this is not a high priority for you. And if it's not a high priority for you, then just close it and you can come reopen it when it is. And as far as like, do we have data on how long issues are open? It's hard to track how long an issue is open as a like metric because we don't close issues once they start receiving DataCap. So the question is like, what is the average amount of time that an issue is open and doesn't get DataCap and eventually closes? We haven't really decided to track that metric, but what we're saying is we think that 14 days of no activity, and again, activity, as we are managing it, like this first pass is just comments back and forth. So if you are the representative, if you are the author, if you are someone who is a notary who doesn't have any more DataCap, or who is a notary who likes this issue but doesn't want to approve it, like anyone can jump in there and add signal to a GitHub issue to show that it is still of interest to people.
Yep.
Also, by way of like interest signaling and notary attraction, I just do want to call out, Alex, the other reason we can't really track this is because applications that don't get DataCap, like it's very hard to reliably bother with tracking, just because there's like spam applications, like things that get closed out instantly because they were made by accident and stuff. So for data quality, we pretty much just drop everything that doesn't get it. So in my opinion, the best proxy of this is looking at time to DataCap actually, and just seeing the magnitude that falls in. And right now at the 95th percentile, so almost every case, TTD for LDN is like 5-ish days, for eFil Plus specifically is 6-ish days, and for direct notary allocation is about 8 days. And so I think 14 is probably safe enough to expect some kind of engagement. What I'm really hoping though is that like this actually makes the job of a client representative, whether that's the SP doing the onboarding or somebody selling Filecoin or an agent or somebody looking to build a business, a little bit easier. Because what's unsaid in this proposal is also the expectation that, hey, as the notary, that also means, you know, you're engaging in a certain amount of time and you're paying attention to when those comments come in and stuff. And so as those things continue to get tracked in the notary leaderboard as well, I think this is a good opportunity for us to make things a little bit more efficient and see how we can make the process easier for clients over time.
Yep, sure, thanks.
Good flags, Alexandre. I appreciate you voicing those. Looking forward to seeing this unfold. And thanks for the comments on chat. I see that the 14 days is coming up a few times for those of you watching. All right, we had an issue that was flagged here, 824, and this was kind of tying back to what I talked about earlier with like using Slack as like a good discussion, but it's not really relevant for like kind of flushing this out. So essentially this came down to Phil Swan and Fog Meta. So before I had this order here for Caro here, but I think it might be beneficial to kind of flip this a little bit and have Charles go first, kind of speak to what was going on, and then maybe see if he could answer some of the questions that were coming up from this and address it. And then after that, we'll turn the floor over to Caro and the community if they have any questions and kind of go forward on that. So just a little bit of a flip to this. We'll have Charles go. So Charles, I know that you're on the line. Hello. Do you want to share screen, talk? What can I set you up with as you answer this?
Yeah, I can, just need to share, provide us more slides. to show everything. Yep. Can you see my slides?
Yes,
Yep.
we could see.
I can see.
Okay, great. So basically, like I would like to say there are lots of information under that issue, and there was lots of doubts, everything. So in order to make it transparent and simple, I decided like not just like continue discussions in this, right, but go right here to tell everybody what's going on and what is the relationship between different entities. So basically, like they're very complicated due to the organization is growing up. For first one, in early days now become entity to 3 entities and across different regions. So to make it short, so first one basically is focused only on software protocol side, head office in Toronto, working on billing platform and other software products, where Figmenta is located in Shanghai, an onboarding partner in Asia. And the Nebula Block head office is in Montreal, is currently working as a hosting company for blockchains. It support Filecoin storage provider business and also Ethereum storage provider, Ethereum RPC services and other blockchain services like Farah, etc. So they do have some connections with each other in business side, and also I personally have some interactions with different entities. So and when like during the application of Figmenta and the Nebula Block, they have revealed that they have been working with the first one in the demonstration. So a simple statement about the notary work upcoming, like there won't be any applications signed from each other, and there won't be any applications signed by any of the 2 notaries in the same round. For example, if the application is init by first one, Figmenta and Nebula Block won't participate in any approval process. For any application we see from the community, there won't be any 2 of them participate in the same round. Yeah. So this is like basically the information for the community and everything. Yeah. And yeah, there's also
quick clarifying question. When you say sorry, when you say in the same round, you mean like for an LDN for an allocation?
Yeah.
Like the 2 signers. So like if Phil Swan signs 1 LDN, Figmenta and Nebula won't be the second, the like approval on that allocation for the LDN, right?
Yeah, they won't become. So the request
if we could also just put this in, it'd be great to put this in those 3 round 4 applications, just somewhere as a comment or in the parent comment. Just excuse me, sorry, to have it, so we have a paper trail too of that.
Okay, yeah, I will put it in the comments. Yeah, that was that issue. Yeah, and yeah, and we do reserve some time for the I'm not sure is this a good time to talk, because I think we reserve some time to talk about what the first one does, because there are also questions about what is first one and what it is doing during the LDN or ecosystem. Yeah, because there was some projects was sending DL through the first one engine. So basically, like first one is the cross-chain protocol for Web3. So the investors are Binance Labs, SNZ Holding, and also Waterdrip, Unicorn Ventures, Chain Capital, FVG, LD Capital. So there was a lot of investors participating in the several rounds, recently raised about $3 million. So very complicated and the investor side. And these are the first one major product line. We have 3 major product lines. The first one is the multi-chain storage, which is provide bucket storage, unchained storage, and to enable people make a payment from different blockchains to Filecoin network. Another FS3 is the S3 interpreter of Filecoin network. And the major one has the relationship with LDN or like verified DL storage is first one billing engine, which was invented in early 2021. I think that is the first meetup 3 months after the mainnet online, we decided to do a bidding engine so everybody can send out DLs and receive DLs in the platform. So it has been running over 2 years now, generate a transfer of about 20 petabyte of storage over the platform. And it has a replication system attached to it. On the terminal side, there was 2 terminal. One is called a Swan client to enable people to send out DLs. Another one is Swan provider. The Swan provider is the storage provider who can connect to the Swan platform and getting importing the DLs. And recently, from last year, about 1 year ago, Swan decided not to maintain it anymore. So those maintenance parts as a client belongs to the Forget in Shanghai. And this is how the bidding engine works. So first of all, SPs need to sign up on the platform to get API keys. So and you need to keep yourself online so you can receive deals. And there were 2 modes. One is a manual mode, one is auto bid mode. The manual bid mode is you know those storage providers and you want to do business with them. You can send a deal direct to the SP you want. If you don't negotiate with them about terms before, you probably get rejections from them. So auto bid is interesting part is anybody can using your own DataCap to send out deals to the engine. They will automatically matching to the different SPs who is interested to taking deals under specific criteria. For example, you want at least 4 GB or as 8 GB, and then the distribution will related to your reputation. So if you have really high reputation in the past, you will get more deals. And you really have a lower combination rate, you have a bad reputation, and you probably won't get new deals for a while. So there are 10 to 30 active SPs connected to the network every day, and the distribution follows the normal distribution. Yeah. So we also see some questions from the community part about why there are duplications of SPs always in different case. So that's reasonable because with these SPs, they collect to the network from every day. So they will receive deals since they have more chance to receive. So it's not surprised that we see a duplicate, not really duplicate, the same SPs get deals from different DataCap because that is by design. Then also we have a new release in the coming days to support RPC services. People can connect with different wallets and as RPC. Probably we will support FVM as well in coming months. And also we did an upgrade recently with Boost because there was lots of people SPs aware that the Market 2 is not compatible with Market 1. So we did an upgrade recently and the release will be this week. And we have talked with the Boost team to provide support. Yeah, and those are also some questions from Slack. They ask why there's duplicate CIDs in some data set sent out from first one and LDN application. There was lots of reasons. One major reason is first one platform has been running for 2 years. It started very early days from the minor X, then become SPX, then Slingshot, participant in all the testing of the DataCap testings. So no wonder there was a lot of CIDs has been there, and we provide a public downloading server, transferred over 10 petabyte of data downloaded. That's why it's very normal. I say there are lots of other applications has some CIDs, so it's not strange things. And a single node has more data than other nodes. So this is also normal because when data set becomes really huge, it really takes time to scaling. We have a node recently. I have signed some applications. They have similar things. I have talking to some of them. They confirm they all have the similar issues. When data set is too large, it takes much time to synchronize because different storage provider have different scaling speed. And third one is about some nodes are not retrievable in Swan engine. Yes, so this is the issue we are currently not sure how to deal with that because retrieval is not really part of the consensus of the Filecoin network at the moment. We can give them DataCap, but we cannot really force them to provide retrieval services. And should we support retrieval as part of a reputation model? So the less retrieval success rate storage providers will get low DataCap, I'm not sure. Like, I think there's something need to discussion, also working with the first party team to see, should it become part of criteria? Honestly, for most storage provider, we want to give them space to grow so they can continue to improve their code and everything.
Charles, thank you for that. I'm going to kind of just give everybody else some time to kind of ask some questions. Carol, I see your hand up. I'll turn the floor over to you.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Calvin. Hey, Charles.
Yeah.
It's so good to know more about FileSwan, but I think you're mistaking my point in this proposal. So one thing that we have confirmed, you do own FogMeta and FileSwan, these two organizations, right?
First of all, as I said in shared in the screenshot, like you see, like I don't own FileSwan, even though I've spent the majority time of FileSwan, but I don't own it. So the first one, like is the token protocol. So basically, like it has a I cannot give you the detail about the token allocations.
I get what you mean. Can I just take it as that you are directing these two companies?
I'm not really directing. So even though I'm the owner of FogMeta, because I'm the 100% shareholder of the owner, but it doesn't mean that I'm participating in daily operations. Yeah.
The part that I don't get here is neither of you disclose the relation fully in notary application. To be honest, I don't understand why would anyone need two notary accounts, especially since, I mean, you are such a big person in Filecoin, this community. But I don't want to make assumptions. Why did you do so? But for me, at least, it's clear, not in line with transparency, at least from my side. And I would like to get more community inputs on that. Like how do
first of all, like in FogMeta application, is make clear that they have a relationship with the first one. It make it very clear of that. And the first one side, because FogMeta is already mentioned that, so that's why first one doesn't say much about that. And another reason is that the application was copied from the V1, V2, when FogMeta is not there before. So that's why there's a small mistake. Don't really care about that, but on FogMeta, it's mentioned very clear that they have relationships with first one. So I don't think it's something like they didn't reveal.
Yeah, I can accept that if you guys disclose it in the notary application, not after I found out. That's a part
it is there. FogMeta has mentioned that in their application.
Yeah, it says partnership. I doubt that would be the right term. And especially, why would you and Leo from FogMeta like pretend not to know each other on Slack? Like I saw a recent discussion about FogMeta about some like data concerns. Like how and why would you investigate?
This is not a pretend don't know each other. It's independent working. Even though it's two companies we talked, but it's still independent entities. It's very clear in the shareholder agreement. It's not under the same management structure. Just like when you're in different groups, you maybe because you need to talk professional, so you don't really say like, hey, I know you know, no, not like that. We still do things in proper way. So that's not a pretend don't know each other. It's just to do things in professional way.
Well, it doesn't really make any sense to me, but yeah.
I'm sorry about that. It doesn't make sense to you.
And also about the data application, like 942, like.
You want to talk about 942?
Yeah. So from my understanding, the application is under the name of ipfs News, right?
Yeah.
So from the founder of ipfs News perspective, so I don't know, is she or he, like people saying it's a he. So like let's say they get reached out by Leo, who is supposedly working for FileSwan, but I know that's from your side, it might be a bit different. But after the application was pointed out as being fake by distant teams, something like just nobody wants to.
Sorry, like sorry to interrupt you. First, that's not a fake application.
Can I finish my sentence though?
Yeah.
Yeah, like for me, it's just odd. Like, how can a non-IPFS news and like a absolutely not relevant person pass a QIB check, get the email screenshot, and push through the whole application and everything. And there are also quite some DMs I'm getting. They're saying Leo doesn't work for Files One Indeed. He works for Nebula, which is another company owned by you. So I mean, I'm at no position to judge, but eventually my point is it reasonable to have like so many organizations that already connected in shares and everything, and suddenly then go out, they take their own position in a different run of notary? That's what my point is here, I think.
You finished?
Yeah.
Okay, great. First of all, because you guys keep on saying that Neo works for First One, so I make it clear Neo is not working for First One, and he's working for Meta. That's a huge difference. Like in legal and law and operation, different perspective. Working for First One or not working for us, that's a huge difference. If you say like an employee in China is working as an employee in Canada, that's 100% incorrect. This is the first, number one thing. Secondly, I make it clear here. You can see, like Leo was notified of the onboarding work, and we confirm like our partnership with ipfs News. First of all, like that is not a fake application. We do find that the data has some issue. I have to admit that the data was found after. In the beginning, nobody really knows that the data has issue. So which means that is a process of data preparation, and it should be more check on the original data. And also the data cap is not like somebody says that First One want to get a cap and use it by themselves. It's not the case. So from the data distribution, you can see that the data cap has been delivered to 14 community SPAs, and each of them is below 5 terabytes. So this is not really like people thinking that First One want to use the data cap for himself to make a revenue. That's a 100% false claim. And yeah, so that's pretty much all the things. Yeah.
Kind of shifting into the final segments of this. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Carol, for like your inputs, your thoughts, and your professional discussion on this one. I think one of the things that I'd like to highlight for like community takeaway is one, thank you to Carol for like flagging this in a very analytical and professional way in the GitHub so that we could have this, professional discussion. Thank you for Charles for kind of spelling out like how these multiple organizations kind of interact with each other. Galen had a pretty prescient comment there in the chat, which is this isn't the first time that we've seen an organization or connections to it. I think one of the big things that we're kind of addressing here is like, how do we highlight that? Does it come up in the disclosure doc? Does it come up in the application? So this is a really good learning, tool for us as we work as a community to kind of improve that. Galen, I know that you had some comments in the chat. Would you like to add anything on this before we kind of close?
So I think as Kara is saying, the thing that we push for is transparency. There is a big difference between like notaries applying as an individual versus an organization, and then notaries like interacting with one another. And I think like not going into the direction of any specific LDN, but there are also additional disclosure forms that we collect that have additional content, and those things are not the notaries are not required to put all of those things in public. They put that information where the governance team can review it, but it doesn't necessarily all need to be captured publicly because it's much more sensitive information and some of the stuff that we use to do our KYC on the notaries. So I think that it makes sense for there to be notaries that have interactions with one another. It makes sense for there to be organizations that have interactions. We have said this before, the foundation and PL have strong connections and ties. The foundation has a notary. PL has projects that have become clients, there is a lot of interplay, and I think that as long as we are all trying to continue to be transparent and push, like our goal is to onboard humanity's most important data onto the Filecoin network in a transparent and distributed way. I think that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Well said. This touched on a few other issues. I think one of them was 811, if I'm getting my issues mixed up, which was like the removal of DataCap and like how we're looking at some of those other ones. RG is not on the call this week to kind of speak to that, but I know next week in 2 weeks, he'll have a lot of updates on the February 28th call. Deep, are you still on the line? Is there anything that you'd like to share on that topic with our last minute that we have?
No, honestly, I think there's a lot of good conversations still happening in Slack. A lot of people are still pushing on high quality stuff on trust and transparency standpoint. We had this proposal where we were thinking of removing a bunch of notaries, and then that effectively got closed down just because it went in a very caustic direction and it wasn't really productive. Just wanted to flag that I don't think that just removing that issue means that those notaries are back to as if like nothing had happened. I think that there should still be extreme scrutiny on their actions. So I want to just shout out Hide. I don't know if he's on the call today, but he posted a couple of messages last week just saying, hey, these guys are still doing this. Like they're not holding up bar XYZ or still not raising the kinds of questions we expect. And that's exactly what we'd like to see. From the standpoint of trust and transparency, just standing in for RG here, he's going to be writing up a proposal on some next steps that we recommend for those particular notaries in ways in which they can earn back their trust. And so you can expect to see that in GitHub in the next 24 hours. Thank you all for all the hard work and all the push. I see a hand from Wynand. Maybe we take that.
Yeah, it was from his standpoint was more like that we agreed that they would hold off on signing until this new proposal was being pushed alive in GitHub. And yeah, this situation has changed a bit. But I think you clarified it that they are supposed to hold off on signing and that we are waiting for the new proposal from RG.
I think the main thing that we're looking for actually is that they're meeting the bar that they set for themselves in their application, right? Which is if they take any action, it should be at the quality that we expect that they claim that they would be at. I'm not actually sure if the final word was like permanently hold off or not, but I do think that the incoming proposal has a suggested next step for them. I don't want to speak on behalf of RG, but I do know that he's coming back online later today. So we should have that shipped by tomorrow. Would love to see Hide one and you guys on that too.
Every notary has their own criteria, their own diligence plan that they put in their notary application. And what we have consistently tried to push on is that each notary told us and the community how they would perform diligence and how they would handle their bookkeeping. So if a notary has made an allocation or a signature on an LDN that is in violation of their own diligence plan and bookkeeping plan, then they just aren't doing their job that they said they were going to do. So what we have pushed them to do is, like, all of these notaries are under scrutiny. We would like to see evidence that they are following their own stated diligence and bookkeeping plans. And so there's, like we're saying, there's going to be a more specific place where we want to like track that and capture that. We have not said that everybody should stop or that anybody should stop signing or anything like that. We have said, you agreed to be a notary and to do a job in this way. That is like how you said you were going to perform your duties. Prove to us that that is how you're performing your duties. If you are not performing your duties in the manner that you said you would, then it makes it much easier for the governance team to make a decision on whether or not we should remove you if you are not performing your duties as you said you would perform them.
Yeah, and just to be like completely explicit, Wynand, the specific thing you're looking for is where they told to stop signing applications. I think there was discussion of telling them to do that. I think for a period they were. As far as I'm aware right now, they actually haven't been told to stop. I just read through the last of 811 while Gillen was talking. So at least as far as I know, other than unless RG has pushed anything out via the Trust and Transparency Working Group that I haven't seen, it was technically okay for them to be signing things as long as they met their bar. I think that the proposal that he's going to push will hold them to exactly that with some more significant constraints, because I think they do need to work on earning back the trust that they have lost through this process.
Maybe since we're at 3 minutes at time, Kara will give you the last comment, and then we'll pin anything for the next. Kara?
Hey, thanks, Kevin. So just out of curiosity, if actually some notary didn't do proper due diligence as what they promised in their notary application, so what's the consequence? Like, what could possibly happen to them?
If notaries are not performing diligence at the level that they said they would, then the trust and transparency team can make a proposal for us to basically, we could do things like remove them from the LD and multisigs. We could remove them from a notary entirely by removing them from the multisigs and removing their personal allocation. We could leave them on the multisig, but give them some amount of scoped signing power to regain trust. There's a number of things that we could propose to do to say, you were not doing your job, so we need to bring you back into doing your job. You can look at it the same way that you look at an employee. If an employee is not doing their job well, how do you handle that? Do you try and manage them back into success? Do you put them on a performance improvement plan, or do you fire them on the spot? And so I think that if we are seeing notaries said they were going to do diligence in a certain way and they're not, our stance now is, if you're going to keep signing things, you need to be doing your diligence. And if that isn't the case, then maybe we need to nip them, put them on a notary improvement plan.
Yeah, I got what you mean. Thanks.
Yes, I also have to go because we were 5 minutes. I'm 5 minutes late. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, K-Ray.
Yeah, Alexandre, if you want to come to the second or comment on the proposal, that'd be the best. Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody. We'll
thanks.
see you on the next call. Cheers. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the second iteration of the February 14th governance call. And PS, happy Valentine's Day. All right, let's take a quick look. High level, this agenda is kind of truncated, and for that, we spend a lot more time on the discussion phase. So I'm going to give an update on the notary status, what's going on with the disclosures, what's going on with the verifications and onboarding timeframes. We have 4 open proposals and then 1 community proposal. Then at the end of the call, we'll have time for any discussion that may come up. As always, these calls are recorded. They're all on the governance calendar. If you're new to the call, just grab that link and paste it into your Google Calendar or shared calendar that you use, and these meetings will show up automatically. And I'll also post in the public Slack channel with just a gentle reminder without a tag that we're kicking off. For all of you that are on the call right now, we have this SLA form. We use Airtable. And this is the way that you kind of mark your SLA. For you notaries that have signed up to have participation, we're going to be building this into the leaderboard and your reputation score. If you're new and just coming to this call for the first time, filling this format is a great way. We don't collect your contact information at all, but if you do become more engaged and active, we really look back on like how long have you been participating. So this is a great way to kind of show that, like, hey, I've been coming to these calls. So that link is in chat. Feel free to post if you have any questions and we'll get right to it. So if you are on this call and you wish that there was a topic that we were going to address or bring up, the best way to do that is go to GitHub. We'll have an issue right there. And then you can actually in GitHub, leave a comment like, hey, Kevin, I'd really like to talk about this proposal. Can I have time? And we will add that to the calendar. So all the links are here in the invite. Just as a reminder, doing this will ensure that we talk about anything that might be on your heart. All right, so let's jump into governance. There is a team. We're here to back you up. If you have any issues, this is kind of our domain specialties on where we can support you the best. Feel free to reach us out in Slack, as well as you can see our handles in GitHub as we go. If you are reaching out, as a gentle reminder, these are all the Slack channels that are available for anything you may need. These are the most commonly used ones for the Fil Plus program. There's probably quite a few more, but these are probably the easiest to access if you wanted to get something really addressed. Most of the communications happens in the Fil Plus public channel. There's around 2,000 of us there, and the notaries have their own channel for onboarding questions, applications, and the like. If you are looking at Slack right now, one of the things we're noticing is a lot of great issues that are brought up about engagement, trust and transparency. And in Slack, there's a easy way to communicate, but what happens in Slack is that those topics usually get dropped off as the message boards go down. So Slack is really effective and helpful, and we'd like to see you continue to use it for questions about the program, the troubleshooting, best practices, any lessons learned, questions. It's a great resource for that. Where we're seeing Slack kind of not hold its weight as far as our community scaling is if there was an issue. Specifically, let's take the example of like a trust and transparency flag. As we flag these in Slack, it's great, but then we have no idea who's jumping into the conversations, what organizations they represent. So if you do have a flag that might engage the community or might have some impact on a different notary or member, using GitHub is a really effective way to kind of communicate that and make sure that it gets heard properly. So if you make an issue in GitHub and then you just kind of label it as a proposal or a discussion, what we'll do as the governance team, myself included, is that we'll make sure that that is getting bubbled up. We'll include it on these governance calls if necessary, and we'll help move that forward and then make sure that it has some actions behind it versus Slack, which can be like a forum where it's just more conversational. So again, GitHub is a really effective way if you'd like to bring something up outside of Slack and then reference it back. I'm going to pause before we go on to the notary and onboarding and see if anybody has any questions or any kind of flags as before we go forward. All right. Feel free to stick a hand up and we'll get right to you. All right, notaries, I'm talking to you. Here's where we're looking right now. We are still in the process of updating all of the verifications for sanctions checks and disclosure forms. So what this meant was you all filled these forms out in Airtable, and what we've been doing is going through each item on the form to verify the names, the contact informations, the organizations, and then this runs through several teams at the foundation. Some of you that filed as an organization, we need to have your first and last name of the human that will control the ledger. And the reason behind this is just the trends in the market for crypto. I think we can all understand we are taking extra actions to make sure that we're linking these properly and safely in full disclosure as we go forward. So in the past, we had just asked for organization name like Filecoin Foundation. Now we specifically need a person within that organization. So for example, we would need Danny O'Brien's name at the foundation as the representative human in charge. So those notaries that need that information, we sent a ping in the notary channel and I sent you a DM. I'll be following up again tomorrow, but we're going to kind of set a soft deadline on this because we're starting to manually add folks. So without this disclosure form, we're going to have to block on you, which may delay your onboarding onto the registry. So again, if you did not provide first and last name, go ahead and send that over. I'll pause and see if anybody has questions. All right. So notaries, you might have seen this come through in the Slack channel as well. This step verifies your ledger address, your GitHub address with our registry tooling. The registry tooling is how we actually allocate DataCap once you've reviewed it. So if you have not taken this step on the registry, you'll be getting one final ping from us because again, like the disclosures, once we add these on, it's a very painstaking process and might cause delays. So if you're a notary on this call and you have not taken the steps, grab this slide deck, check your Slack, and go verify your physical ledger as soon as possible. As far as training goes, what we're rolling out is a series of presentations that kind of walk you through the workflow of doing this job. Remember, being a notary is providing that diligence, that review, that human aspect of a large data application. So what this training is doing is it's showing you how to use the tooling as well as how to think and communicate like a notary can be really successful. So Phil has been spearheading this. He's grabbed screenshots from the UI and we'll publish this shortly. We'll probably time this to launch just before you get your access notaries to actually go in and start signing that. As a quick plug, if you are a new notary, you can still perform diligence. So if there was an application that you were looking at and you're just waiting for your DataCap allowance before you can start signing, I would leave comments in that issue or application of your diligence plans, of your questions, and that way when the DataCap is allocated, you could sign right that hour. So if you have any questions on that, please hit me up. And again, thank you for your patience. I know some of you notaries have reached out like, hey, you've done everything. You're just kind of waiting. And yes, you have. I thank you for that patience. We have just scaled quite a bit, if I'm going to be frank. And with that scale comes just putting the right systems in place, and that takes time. And we're kind of reaching that limit of finishing it up. So again, thank you for that patience, and we'll get you onboarded properly. So before I go on to the next section, does any notary or onboarding have any questions on this process? All right. So we have 4 proposals that are current right now, as well as 1 community discussion. So on the morning, we had Phil and Simon speak to that. I think that they're not on the call right now. So Phil, feel free to interrupt. I didn't see you come in the waiting room, but I'll speak to this if you're not here. So providing an update on the staking proposal, and this is issue 817, if you'd like to pull that up or you haven't seen it. And essentially what's going on with this is we rolled this out for the community 2 weeks ago. We had a lot of conversations about how this tooling will work. And Fabry, who is a contractor to Protocol Labs, has been working on a mock-up, this MVP product essentially. So we built his demo video into this presentation deck. We're not going to invest the time while there's 40 of us on a call to watch a video, but at your own leisure, come through and take a look. He won a hackathon project with this, so we're kind of excited about how the functionality works. So again, we're still looking for comments on this whole staking. It could be like pros, cons, whatever your thoughts are for it. And we're going to pause at the end for any kind of like questions you may have or any discussion points. But a really effective way to get your voice heard is leaving comments in those GitHub issues. So we'll circle back at the end if you have questions about the staking proposal. But again, when this goes forward, let me just make sure this comes back, is that this was not meant to solve the problem of like requiring notaries to stake to be a part of this. Phil's spoken a lot of detail about this morning. So if you're curious to listen to more detail, since a notary needs to essentially verify the LDN, one of the questions that came up is this going to move to a world where essentially notaries are worried about signing LDN applications for fear of losing their stake? And a lot of this gets addressed in the GitHub. And so if you, again, have any questions about this or want to make your voice heard, this issue 817 is the perfect place to do it. I'm going to pause for a minute and see if anybody has any questions on this staking proposal.
Kevin, where does the file come from originally? Were you asking people to put up their own capital?
Yeah, I believe at this current iteration, the way the conversation works is yes, putting up their own capital in order to verify those applications. It goes into a lot of detail on how that works in the actual application, but yes.
Okay, no worries. I'll have a read of it. Thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that, Mark. Thanks. I see a question come through in the chat. It's from Darlene over at SSX Future. It says, do we have a deadline for onboarding? Good question, Darlene, just to kind of skip back in the slides so it's easier to kind of follow. As far as the onboarding, no, there's no deadline. I think the deadline's on us, the governance team, to make sure that it's done right and sustainable and then out for you as soon as possible. So I kind of mentioned we're at this juggling point where there's fast and there's correct. We're trying to like land in the middle with both boxes checked. So I would say that you're probably going to see that onboarding come through once those fill is sent. I don't have a time frame for you, any day now, and we'll get that out. All right. Again, this is one of the second proposals. This is 821. If you haven't seen this proposal or had a chance to read it, essentially what we're seeing, and this was spearheaded by Simon, is that there's been this influx of reasons why there might be a need to remove DataCap. So this could be something as effective as someone needs to change their wallet. This could be that it was sent to the wrong address, or this could be potentially that we start to get into like addressing the consequences of like violation of community standards and revoking that. So this is the first step to kind of have the thought process spelled out for how we would address this as a community. So we spelled out that for this to take place, we're not going to give all the reasons for it, but what would be the mechanism? The mechanism to trigger this would be once it was flagged, there would need to be 2 signatures from various notaries from different regions, as well as 2 root key holders. So this wouldn't be something that was taken lightly. This would require like a significant broad swath of the governance and lead community across notaries to make this happen. And what this would be used for is effectively addressing those 3 key points. So I wanted to kind of pause on this and see if anybody had any comments or thoughts or had a chance to review. All right. Well, if anything should change, please feel free to leave it. This one is a little bit more straightforward in that it's just kind of building the foundation for how this process would work. And you'll probably see more as this envelops in the next quarter. So auto close is one of the third proposals that's open. This is 818. It's linked right there in the slide deck. And essentially, if you are an existing notary or a new notary that got access to the registry, the first thing you're going to notice when you look at a lot of these applications is there are hundreds of them, lots of these applications that we're working through. What we're also noticing and hearing from notaries is some of these applications are extremely old. And there is not a lot of like activity on them. There's not a lot of communication and back and forth. And so then it really becomes a juggling act of like triaging which ones to respond to, as well as knowing if the application is still needed. So what this proposal is suggesting is that having some kind of a trigger that's built onto these legacy applications that would close them out automatically. Now, if this were to happen, like the application was closed out and the applicant still wanted the data, it would just be as simple for that applicant just to click reopen that issue, and then they're right back on that time frame. The benefit of having this auto close is that when you go to the registry, we would essentially sweep out a lot of those old legacy things that we might not be addressing, but still will be cluttering the system. And again, this would be an easy way if anybody wanted to reopen it. So the time frame that we set was 14 days. The 14 days is not based off like a specific TTD metric. It's more based around like a common sense, like 2 business weeks with an organization. If you haven't heard back from them within that time frame, then that might be that, hey, this wasn't like a priority. And again, can be reopened. But that's where the 2 weeks time frame came by based off it. So I'll pause and see if anybody has any thoughts or questions about this issue or anything they'd like to address.
I think it's a good idea.
Sweet. In the morning call, one of the topics that came up was, is this 14 days like a reasonable time frame? Should it be longer? And just to close this out, one of the conversation was, once you start extending to 30 days, what are you really benefiting by those extra 2 weeks? Like if we are closing non-movement applications. So again, if you have thoughts or want to expand, this is issue 818 if you'd like to discuss. The last issue that we had for the call was flagged by a community member. And what they were is essentially kind of calling out for discussion was the disclosure and reporting, self-reporting and transparency around an organization and like different aspects that would entail. Before I kind of highlight this issue, I wanted to commend Caro here and Charles Cow for what I would just say was like really respectable communication and really helped move this along quickly and effectively. So essentially, once Caro kind of saw this, she flagged a GitHub proposal, kind of spelled out like, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Here's what I'd like an explanation on in front of the community in a very transparent way, and followed up in Slack after the issue was made. So there was a way to kind of move this discussion into like a place where we could voice it and have like a very framed conversation. So they both joined the line this morning. I do not believe they're on this call. I'm going to pause really quick in case they joined the meeting while I was talking. Charles, do you happen to be on the call now? Yeah, I don't see him in the text. So I'm glad that I took a screenshot. And Caro, if you happen to be on the call and I don't see you, feel free to raise a hand or interrupt me at any time. What Charles essentially did on the call, number one, is that he joined the line and he just kind of said, like, essentially what they are 3 different organizations. And he spelled out kind of like who was the controlling partner within the organizations. And then he kind of made like a forward transparency commitment, is that even though they had like signed up within these multiple organizations that had loose affiliations, they kind of committed on the call that they won't be signing applications or that they're both a part of or an organization. So this was a nice touch. We have that slide deck in the first call if you want to go back and watch it. I'm obviously just paraphrasing some of the points that Charles brought up, but I did want to highlight the fact that like it was a nice way to handle this discussion. give both parties an opportunity to kind of have a forum to kind of go through this and address it. So again, I'd like to commend Charles and Carol here for like bringing this up and discussing. I'm going to pause and see if anybody on the line saw this issue or had thoughts or kind of wanted to address it, and I'll just mute. Well, a long mute and a long silence. If anybody has anything that comes up, feel free to bring it as we go. All right. Last on what may be a very quick call for this Valentine's Day is any kind of new business. This is an open line. Anything that we talked about on the agenda, anything on your mind, complete open forum.
Kevin, I believe my colleague Greg might have joined the earlier call today, and he brought up something about just expectations on DataCap tranche size increases or total DataCap per LDN increases above 5 petabyte. Was that discussed?
I do. Unless I'm taking crazy pills, no, we didn't really get into that proposal. Did he happen to mention a proposal number or anything? I'll happily check the call logs, but no.
You didn't. I mean, I've had one open from way back when too on this topic. And so James, it might be good if you just resurrects that one. Like I think that like in general, that's a topic that we've gone back and forth on quite a bit. Not a difficult one to sort of re-kick. We spent more time with him talking about inactivity and the proposal from Simon around basically like closing out applications that didn't have any kind of activity in a 2-week horizon.
Got it. Then we'll follow up on those proposals. Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. I guess one more question from Slack, then I'll ring the bell if there's nothing that comes up. It says, when can the notaries go in and sign? Joffrey, so essentially, if you join the call late, we are waiting for the final verifications and disclosures, sanctions checks, and the onboarding guidance will probably be out early next week. There is a conference going on. So yes, you'll be seeing that any day now as it comes through.
I think we also have a hand, Kevin, from Young.
I appreciate you seeing that for me. Young, floor is yours.
Okay, I have 2 questions. The number one, about the notary onboarding, we haven't received one field since the last call. Is it normal? Is it normal?
Yeah, I think after this call, I'll double check. But if you have not received a direct message from me in our private channel saying, hey, I need some information, that means you're good to go. So unless I've reached out to you, you should be all set. So I'll double check yours after this call and I'll just make sure you're all set.
Okay, I will check the ledger address because we haven't received the one field. And number 2, can you go back to the slide, move back the slide about onboarding, notary onboarding. Oh,
if you happen to have joined late, or just to kind of say it, we're going to roll the onboarding trainings out the same time right before the DataCap is received. But if there was an application that you were specifically looking, sorry, go ahead.
Please go one more, the former slide. About the, yes, this one. I have one question. Yeah. You mean the first controller of the wallet, that means, does that mean the same, does that means the person who controls who mainly control the ledger wallet, like yes. The person, just like the name on the ID card?
Yes, that is correct.
So we didn't receive any dreams in our primary Slack channel. So is that normal? Should we send the link in the...
I'll double check when we get off this call, and I'll make sure that you're all set. But if you haven't heard from me in your application or in Slack, then you should be all set. So I'll double check just to make sure that you're all alleviate. But if you haven't heard from me, then you should be good to go.
Okay, great. I'm good. Thank you.
And Ji Yang, yes, we're waiting on the fill transfer once the sanctions checks are all complete. Once those sanctions checks are verified, then the fill can be sent out to cover your gas. So it's totally normal. It's all in process as we go. All right, I'm going to give you guys a friendly hello. Happy Valentine's Day. And stop the sync. If you have any follow-up questions from this, feel free to, of course, raise it in Slack, hit us up, and we'll be happy to get back to you. Again, thank you for coming to the very romantic Valentine's Day Notary Governance Sync, and we'll see you on February 28th, California time. Cheers.